discuss this further is forensic psychiatrist Dr. David Holmes. Dr. Holmes, welcome to the show. An astonishing level of detail afforded this afternoon by Mrs. Justice Yip, giving a chilling insight, in particular, into the mindset of Scarlett Jenkinson. I wanted to try and get into that with you, if I could. She was clearly obsessed by serial killers, had detailed notes and records of people like Jeffrey Dahmer, how they killed, talk of Satanism, of use of the dark web, how she blurred the lines between fantasy and reality. My question to you, I guess, is rather simple, and that is, can people like Scarlett Jenkinson, is this nurture or is it nature? Are some people just evil?
I think in this case, you have someone who is by nurture, has certain traits. She's quite driven. I think she had some ADHD diagnosis and some autistic spectrum diagnosis, which is quite evident in the way that she approached all this. It's kind of like fairly insular. She doesn't integrate with other people very well. If she does so, often, like her compatriot Ratcliffe, it's by message. And I think some of this aspect was actually in court. So I was very surprised that the judge perhaps didn't actually deliver the verdict to them by message, because they'd have taken more notice of it, I think. In the case of Jenkinson, she is someone who has become extremely obsessed. I mean, normal person would become obsessed, but someone with the kind of autistic spectrum will become even more engrossed, obsessed, and driven by the subject matter that they're coming into. And obviously, this is unfortunately the worst subject matter that she could possibly have come across. Another autistic person possibly would have been train numbers or something incredibly benign, but again, approached with a very impersonal regard for the subject matter. She's fairly distant from others. She distanced herself and Ratcliffe from others. They bonded together in this, but even then, they mostly communicated by messages. So showing the kind of impersonal bond that they had. This is not an absolutely, starting from a normal perspective, someone who is totally evil. This is someone who has become engrossed in evil and now sees that as their kind of way of life, their reason for carrying on, their reason, their motivation for facing the rest of their life. I think this hasn't actually been pulled away from her, although I think Ratcliffe would be much more amenable to finding something else to be interested in and move away from the idea of killing or harming others entirely.
What was fascinating today, Dr. Holmes, was that when Mrs. Justice Yip was looking into those mitigating circumstances, the underlying conditions, she talked about Jenkinson suffering from a severe form of conduct social disorder. Also, she wasn't mature. She'd been self-harming. She previously suffered with anorexia, autism, and as you said, that's diagnosis for ADHD when she was younger. And yet, she pushed that to one side in how she carried out her sentencing, because she concluded that you wanted to do this, you wanted to kill, and you wanted to do again. The diagnosis offered limited mitigation, and that, I think, will come as some comfort to the parents and to many people watching on.
Yes, I think in this case we have the kind of lifelong conditions that she had, which, you know, the average member of the public, you might think, well, isn't that mitigating? Isn't that sort of like, you know, making it too easy for them to do that and not know what they're doing? No, in this case, it's a bit like somebody being diagnosed as psychopathic. In fact, there are links between autism and psychopathy. In that, it's aggravating in court, not mitigating. It's aggravating. It makes them slightly more dangerous in that you have to overcome these levels of these disorders, which allow a lack of empathy and allow a kind of lack of social insight into what they're doing. In other words, they don't see it in the context of other people and how other people see it, only as they see it. So that has to be overcome. And that is a very long process, because these are not disorders that go away. These are lifelong conditions.
OK, forensic psychiatrist Dr. David Holmes, thank you for joining us. Fascinating insight. And to recap, Mrs. Justice Yip said you both took part in a particularly brutal murder. You actively participated in this sadistic murder, she said to Eddie, plus motivated in part by transphobia. But to Scarlett, she said your primary motive was your deep desire to kill.